Greater efficiency at a lower cost, says the governor, but can he persuade the legislature, the lobbyists, the bureaucracy, the electorate? Another robust month for the state treasury, additional fuel on the tax cut fire. A Senate spectacle in Washington. What impact here among voters of both parties? But first, the latest campaign for casinos in Arkansas. Pass or don't pass, 7-Eleven or boxcars. We'll hear both sides of the question next on Arkansas Week.
Local broadcast of Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the award-winning Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Arkansas's largest major newspaper, bringing you local, national, and international news since 1819. By the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. A proposed consolidation at the state capitol, a burgeoning state treasury, problems with services for troubled youth, and the Kavanaugh controversy. We'll get to all of it with our roundtable in a moment. First, one of the questions facing Arkansas voters next month, assuming the state Supreme Court upholds its ballot position, is whether casinos, 4 of them, should be given constitutional authorization. 2 of those casinos would be located where pari-mutuel wagering and games of skill already are permitted. The other 2 would be in Jefferson and Pope counties. The tax revenues would be divided among state and local governments involved and also would increase racing purses. It's issue 4, and we have both sides represented. Anna Stieritz, a Pope County resident, is allied with the forces opposing issue 4, and Nate Steele is associated with the Driving Arkansas Forward campaign, which, of course, advocates for issue 4. Mr. Steele, we'll begin with you. This is not the first time that casinos have been proposed in Arkansas, and certainly not the first time that the issue hangs with the Supreme Court, but let's assume for a moment that it does take ballot position and voters have the option to enact it. Why should they?
Well, Steve, this is the first time that voters have had the chance to vote on a casino amendment that was merit-based. There are no operators written into the Constitution in this version, as you've seen previously. The Racing Commission will select the operators based on merit. And also, this provides for local control. And no one can operate in a city or county without the express written support of the mayor and the county judge. You know, for decades, Arkansas has been losing a whole lot of revenue to surrounding states, and we've been highlighting that in our advertising campaign. I'll be happy to answer specific questions on that, but the unique part of this amendment is that it is merit-based and it does provide for local control.
All right.
I would disagree strongly that issue 4 provides any kind of meaningful local control. The amendment language says that a letter of support will be issued by the county judge or the mayor, but it doesn't have anything to say about what triggers the support letter being generated, when it's triggered. I mean, for all I know, the letter of support could already be in a casino applicant's pocket. The amendment doesn't address that at all. So to call local control like embedded in this amendment, it really just makes a mockery of it. The people in Pope County are going to be, well, and the other counties affected, are the ones who are going to actually be affected by casino placement. So all of Arkansas is given a vote on this issue, but it's going to be the local communities that bear the social and economic costs if a casino comes to town. Our vote doesn't have any control over that. We could all in Pope County vote against issue 4. The rest of the state could say, no, we think it's a good idea to have increased tax revenue. Pope County, have a casino whether you want it or not.
All right, Mr. Steele. Fair enough.
Well, it's just not accurate. You elect your mayor and your county and judge, and they make major decisions for their localities. So if you're concerned about who your mayor and county judge is, then I guess you elect different ones, but they have the control. In addition to Pope County, for example, there have been ordinances passed locally that say it must pass in Pope County before the mayor or county judge could issue a letter of support. And we've said publicly that's fine. We provide for local control in this amendment, but we also intended to inspire that kind of discussion on a local level. We want mayors and county judges and quorum courts and city councils and public advocacy groups to sit down and decide if this is the right fit or not. But they should make that decision based on the facts, not based on fear-mongering and false statistics about crime and things like that.
Well, if you are, in fact, though, not writing in the names of individuals, if the casino amendment is as much conceptual as anything else, does not Ms. Stieritz have a point, though? It will be, presumably it'll pass easily in Crittenden and in Garland County, but the rest of the regulatory burden, or at least whatever attends a casino, will apply in particular to Pope and to Jefferson.
Right, and as will a substantial amount of tax revenue. Almost half of the tax revenue will go to the city and the county. You're looking at a total tax impact of around $12 million annually for Pope County and Russellville as a city. If they don't want that, that's fine, that's their decision. But local control is in the amendment to provide for that, and there are local ordinances that also provide for that.
Ms. Stieritz.
There is no local ordinance in place. Now, the quorum court passed a resolution, and we have successfully used our petition power to get a ballot initiative on the fall ballot that would allow us to vote for a county ordinance that would say that no letter of support can be issued until there's been a countywide election on the issue of a casino, which, by the way, amendments that have gone to vote in the past, all of those have actually contained provision for a local control election. This one specifically does not. If Drive Arkansas Forward had wanted to actually initiate meaningful local control, there would be a provision in there for a local election. Now, this letter of support is not, what it does is it takes the decision-making power away from the people of Pope County and it places it in one elected official who would be subject, no doubt, to pressure from lobbyists, pressure from business interests. There's no reason why we should not explicitly have, as a county of voters, the ability to say yes or no to the casino. Placing that decision on one elected official is just wrongful. And yeah, we have our ordinance on the ballot. It may pass. It may be challenged by casino interests after it passed. I'll be shocked if it's not. What we hope is that eventually, if the casino question arises, is that every voter in Pope County would get to have a meaningful say in whether or not that comes.
Are your objections and those of your allies, are they rooted primarily in the language, the technicalities of the proposal, or is there another aspect?
Well, I don't call it a technicality. The problem is that the amendment says there's a letter of support that the casino interests need, and it leaves it at that.
The machinery, I should have said, of the amendment.
Well, to some extent, yeah. It leaves the voter thinking, oh, there's a meaningful way for local people to have say on this issue, and there simply isn't. So that's my objection.
Yeah, Mr. Steele?
That sounds to an objection to how government is run in general. I mean, we elect leaders that make these decisions for us. You send senators and representatives to the Capitol to make decisions. You elect mayors and county judges and governors to make decisions, and they have authority that vested in them from the voters. Not every issue is a direct democracy issue. If it were, it would create chaos. What the ordinance that Ms. Stieritz explains does is it says it doesn't have to pass once in Pope County, it has to pass twice. So in other words, it could pass 100% to 0 in this election, and by resolution of the quorum court, the county judge would have the authority to write a letter. But because of the new petition that her group has circulated, it would actually have to pass twice. It could pass 100%, and then it has to pass again before they could authorize it. So I think there's some concern there that that's not exactly democracy. The amendment is structured in the same way that a whole lot of issues are when it comes to ADC grants and so on and so forth, where the mayor and the county judge gets to have a say, and he or she would have to listen to the voters in that aspect.
The mechanics of the proposal, if enacted, for instance, set that aside for a second. Set aside also the 4 counties that would be directly involved. There has been, compared to previous years, it seems to this observer, rather less involving the philosophical, moral aspect of casino wagering in Arkansas. You address that at all? Is there a proposal that you could support, for example?
Well, if the voters in Pope County, as a group, express a will to have a casino in Pope County, I have to give them that people are entitled to their opinions. In my extensive conversations with people in Pope County, there's strong objections to it. We had no problem gathering 5,500 signatures of registered voters who wanted to sign on to our ballot petition to give themselves a voice in this issue. And I've worked with a broad coalition of people in Polk County who object to the presence of a casino on economic, on law enforcement, on moral, on child welfare grounds. That conversation is definitely being had. One of the problems is that a lot of this stuff has flown under people's radar. They're not aware that Polk County's been targeted as a casino locale. It's kind of counterintuitive. That's not really generally the way we do business when it comes to legislation and when it comes to elections. And so there are a lot of people who aren't aware. Part of the problem is getting people aware of the fact that there's an amendment on your ballot that will put a casino in Polk County. And people are like, what? Huh.
Nate Steele.
Steve, I think part of the reason that discussion is not being had is because the jury is in on that issue. We've had electronic games of skill for a long time in Oaklawn and Southland, and you've seen no rise in crime in Hot Springs and West Memphis. You've seen a rise in jobs and a rise in infrastructure, but you haven't seen a rise in crime. And Arkansans have access to gaming. On my way here to Conway, where we're taping this, I passed 3 or 4 billboards for Oklahoma casinos. Last year alone, in the last 12 months, and this is according to the Mississippi Gaming Commission on their website, in the last 12 months, they've had 1,145,000, I think, visitors from Arkansas. That's not unique visits, that's total visits to Mississippi casinos from Arkansas. Surrounding states have the same thing. We are literally bookended at every border by casino gaming, and we have 2 electronic games of skill operations here, and you just haven't seen that rise in crime and rise in all the things that all the naysayers generally say. You see a rise in tax revenue is what you see, and I think that's why we're not hearing the same old, tired opponents' arguments.
Well, we started with Steele, we'll close with Stewart's because time is, are you?
I would say that, the carrot of increased tax revenue has been dangled out there in front of Arkansas voters. Fair enough. But the people who are going to bear the cost of actually hosting a casino do not have a fair say in the process. That's my problem with issue 4.
And with that, we have to close because we're out of time. For both sides, thank you very much for representing your positions.
Thank you.
Issue 4. We'll be right back with our panel.
Today represents the largest reorganization of state government in Arkansas history. 42 departments, hundreds of boards and commissions with over 25,000 employees that report directly to the governor.
Governor Hutchinson unveiling this past week his plan for a consolidation of state agencies, and that's where we'll pick up with the program. Dr. Kim Maslin joins us from the political science staff at Hendrix College. Michael Hiblin, KUAR Public Radio in Central Arkansas. Wesley Brown from Talk Business and Politics. And thanks to everybody for coming in. Wesley, you guys were there.
Yeah, it was a big, probably one of the biggest crowds I've ever seen in the governor's conference room over at the state capitol. Governor's plan is to consolidate 42 state cabinet level state agencies down to 15. And also will bring all the 200 boards and commissions under the banner of those departments. Really comprehensive, detailed plan, but I guess the key issue is that this still has to go to the legislature in 2019 and then be approved by the legislature. It's the first real big attempt at transforming or downsizing government, state government since Dale Bumpers back nearly 50 years ago. Governor Huckabee tried and had some small success, but Governor Mike Beebe came back and kind of put the Department of Health and Human Services and Health back together that occurred in the Huckabee administration. But this is it's gonna be huge. But I still think there's gonna be a lot more details that come out, a lot more discussions, because as you know, there's a lot of state agencies that have their niches, that have their little cliques in state government. It's gonna be difficult to get approved by the legislature, I believe. I think it's gonna be one of the toughest fights that Hutchinson has in his tenure as governor.
So what's been the initial response, though?
So far,
in the bureaucracy in the General Assembly.
Yeah, that I haven't heard a whole lot yet. I think people are still taking it in. Mm-hmm. It is very complicated. You look at these charts and graphs that he handed out. It's a lot to take in, and a lot of things to be decided. You have more than about 200 boards and commissions that are going to be moved under a single umbrella. And there's still some details that have to be worked out. The governor has been talking about this since pretty much since he came into office, having this as a goal. And I think he wanted to make sure he got this out before Election Day.
I think one of the key things about, unlike a private sector downsizing or acquisition or merger, or there was no announcement of employees being let go. Or he said there will be possibly some jobs lost due to attrition. But generally, where are you in these type of situations? They're looking for savings, and they're looking for up to $15 million annually in savings. Where are you going to get these? Just through efficiencies, just through combining these, and there's no and some people have called it a moving of chairs. You know, that you're just rearranging, and that's what some of his critics, Mark West and Jared Henderson, said, that it's kind of a rearranging of the state government instead of real transformation. So there will be more details, and it stands to reason that somebody has to lose their jobs. If you're only going to have 15 cabinet level officers that are going to run these, there's 42 people with pretty big egos out there. So
yeah, and it's the governor sought to offer some reassurances, said that you won't be cutting services from state government.
Right.
He said there would also be independence maintained where appropriate, gave several examples of that. But yeah, the quote from Jared Henderson, the Democratic opponent for governor, was, "Arkansans deserve bold leadership that solves our problems, not rearranges them." So still a lot to be seen as we move forward with this, but a lot of people very curious at exactly how this will be done.
Well, we've moved forward 3 months now into the fiscal year, and the report from the state treasury continues to be stellar.
Yeah, revenue report came in earlier this week for the month of September, about 635 million in revenue for the month. The key portion of this, of course, is income tax collections and sales tax collections. Income tax collection shows that payrolls are up. People are, as we noted, actually the U.S. unemployment report came in. It came out today at an all-time low. So we're still seeing people enter the workforce. The millennials are job hopping, moving up, looking for better jobs. And that's what's driving this revenue growth. More people at work. But there is some caution here. Their consumers are starting to look at their pocketbook. There's some issues of household debt and credit that are rising. Interest rates, of course, in the past week were raised. So there is some concern that this real big growth in the economy, in the job market, especially in gross domestic product, is starting to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, but the Hutchinson administration, to my knowledge, has not thrown any cold water on the idea. It's his idea, anyways, pledged additional tax cuts.
And it just seems like every time I talk with the economist every month, when these new revenue numbers come out, it's always the same. It's above projections. It's above the same month last year. So it just keeps getting better and better, and at a certain point you expect it's got to slow down.
And yeah, as you mentioned, the tax cut plan, the legislative task force that is meeting almost every other week, they are still looking at, as you said, those tax cuts for upper income and businesses going into the 2000 legislative session. That gives us two really big issues going into the 2000 sessions. It's tax cuts and this transformation. So the 2019 session is really going to be pretty, it's going to establish maybe the legacy of Governor Hutchinson and his administration.
Going forward into the weekend, we had on Friday morning, Dr. Kim Maslin, we had a cloture vote. Both Arkansas senators voted to end debate on the Kavanaugh nomination. Both have pledged to support the nominee when the final vote comes on, likely on Saturday. Is there a winner in all of this? And how's this going to affect Arkansas?
There is no winner in all of this. I don't think anybody's surprised by the votes of the two Arkansas senators. I think, one of the things that's going to be interesting to look at moving forward, you've got midterm elections coming up. The president's party virtually always loses seats at the midterm elections. There's two exceptions to that. The other factor is that since at least 1980, women tend to go for Democratic candidates. And women and men are having quite different reactions to this event. Right? Women are having the reaction of this feels very familiar, right? We all know Brett Kavanaugh. We went to school with Brett Kavanaugh. We've worked with Brett Kavanaugh. We understand that temper because we have worked our way around it in almost all facets of our lives. So it felt very familiar, and I think it resonated with women in a way that possibly it didn't with men. We've worked with him, and we've understood that entitlement to our bodies, and we've warned friends to stay away from him at parties. So I think it'll be interesting to look at how this affects turnout, whose base actually gets mobilized by this. I'd be interested in taking a look at whether or not it has affected fundraising over the past couple weeks. So I think there's going to be a number of interesting questions to be raised. I think the other interesting thing to think about is what it's really saying about our politics, right?
Take it from there. That's kind of what. If it does, especially animate women voters, especially, in which direction in a profoundly red state such as Arkansas has become?
Right. I think what I want to look
strong arguments
for,
on both sides of the nominee.
What I want to look for is what does the gender gap look like, right? How big is it, and how does it vary across states? Because you do not typically see a single national gender gap and you see that play out in every state. It's different in every state. And I think it'll be fun to take a look at what that actually looks like.
Is there going to be a generational divide too, do you suspect?
So I think there is a generational
among
divide.
Women,
and maybe actually among men. President Trump made the statement, I think it was this week, that this is a scary time for young men in America. I think it's actually a scary time for old men in America who are accustomed to feeling entitled to women's bodies. The young men that I know, and I've raised two and taught hundreds, are eagerly lining up next to the women in their lives asking, how can I support you? I think the scary part is for the old men who have felt a certain entitlement that comes from their privilege and who are digging in and trying to hold on to that privilege despite some pretty significant cultural shifts in how we talk about and how we think about and how we treat sexual assault as a legal phenomena, and also how we deal with it in the workplace. When you think back to the Anita Hill Clarence Thomas confirmation hearings, we got the term sexual harassment as a real legal concept out of those hearings. So before the Clarence Thomas hearings, sexual harassment existed as a term only a very few academics use. But as part of our general lexicon, it was not present. And that affects how you can talk about your experiences. It affects how women can tell people what has been happening to them in the workplace. And I think a lot of the folks who are feeling scared don't know what to make of some of those cultural changes.
Yeah, guys, do you see much of a pickup, a change? Russ?
Yeah, two observations. I think one, she talked about what will happen during the election. I think this issue, this whole Kavanaugh hearing and debate, resonated with the Republican base, and you're starting to see that in some numbers. But it also, as Kim noted, you're going to see, I think, in a real rush among women in the Democratic election, and I think you're going to see a big boost of not only this is going to be broad. It's not going to just stop with this election. It's going to continue after.
Yeah, Michael, you see anything?
Well, we had the Democratic base that was so excited leading up to this. Now I've heard polling showing that the Republican base is now likewise really geared up. So you might actually see stronger than normal turnout during this for mid-election.
We will be watching the numbers eagerly. Everybody come back. That's the program for this week. We'll see you next week.
Local broadcast of Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the award-winning Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Arkansas's largest major newspaper, bringing you local, national, and international news since 1819. By the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.